I first noticed it when I looked out my window after a short night walk. At first I thought it was just my mom leaving something in my room. But when I got a little closer, I saw that the shape of the object was human-like. Maybe it was my mom or my sister. I decided to wave my hand in greeting, but the figure didn't move. I doubted it was a person. Maybe mom put a mannequin there since she's a seamstress. But why would she put it in my room? Walking into the house, I immediately ran into my mom. I said hello and asked what she put in my room. In response, she gave me her perplexed look and told me she hadn't even gone in there. Okay, whatever, I said and went to my room. To my surprise, there was nothing near the window. I figured I was imagining things and headed for the shower. The next day, coming back from my friends, I again glanced at my window. The thing was standing there again. This time I decided to get closer and examine what it was. Standing in my window was a tall, thin figure, very tall, and seemed to be wearing no clothes at all, gray-colored skin. It was taller than me. Its face was more human-like, two eyes whose whites glowed like dim car headlights. The second night I saw it, it just looked down at me. It didn't move. I didn't move either. I felt a creeping fear go up my spine. In that moment, it suddenly occurred to me that an intruder could have broken into our house. He had done it yesterday, too, but for some reason I had chosen to ignore that alarm bell and put it down to my fantasy. My mom and sister were at home, and I rushed inside because there was no telling what this maniac had planned. When I entered the house, everything was in order. My family members were sitting downstairs watching TV as usual. Gasping, I stood in front of the screen and looked at them, wondering how they could have failed to notice that someone had broken into our house. Their faces reflected worry. "What's the matter?" Mom asked, frowning. "There's someone upstairs," exclaimed me. "What?" she asked, raising her voice. "What are you talking about?" "I saw him through my window." Without waiting for them to follow me, I stormed up the stairs, determined to catch the culprit. On the way, I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and, without a second thought, stormed into my bedroom. The gray creature had inexplicably disappeared. Gone without a trace. I checked my sister's room, my mom's room, every bathroom, closet, and pantry I could. The creature was gone. For some reason, its disappearance bothered me more than its presence. I barely slept that night, expecting it to emerge from some hiding place. But he never did. The next day I searched the whole house again for signs of someone else's presence, but to no avail. Something prompted me to leave the house and look out the window. There was someone's figure standing in my window again. I without a second thought bullet flew into the house and ran into the room. Nothing. Whoever it was wouldn't have had time to hide so quickly. And what if he had? I ran back outside and saw the figure in the window again. There was no one else at home, so without taking my eyes off the window, I called the police. About 15 minutes later, I heard the siren. The whole time I kept my eyes on the window. It stood there and never moved once during that whole time. A police officer came up to me and told me to stay where I was while they inspected the house. He ran away so fast that I didn't have time to say anything to him. I stood and waited while they searched the house. To my surprise, the figure didn't budge. Isn't he afraid? Suddenly something happened that made me speechless. A policeman looked out of my window, and literally half a meter away from him stood the figure. I started to panic and point my finger in the direction of the figure. The policeman looked worried. He started to look around and put his hand on his belt. Presumably his gun was there. After looking around, he looked in my direction again. I ran over to the window and poked my finger once more at the figure. The policeman looked over there. I couldn't believe my eyes. He was looking straight at this thing and saw nothing. After a while, 3 men came out of my house and approached me, saying that the house was clear. The policeman who was in my room said that he did not understand what I was trying to tell him. I turned toward the window and pointed my finger at the figure again. He looked again at my window and replied that there was no one there. The policeman grinned and added that maybe I should spend more time outdoors, not playing online games. I didn't answer him anything. I didn't know what to say. The creepiest realization came to me a little later, when I realized that no one could see it but me. After that incident, I looked up to the window more than once when I was outside, and each time I saw the creature looking down at me. Sometimes I would close my eyes, making threatening gestures to try to scare it, but it never had any effect on it. It just stood there and watched, like it was waiting for something. After a week of watching it as I walked the dog late at night, I decided to do something about it. First, I tried closing the blinds and turning off the lights before going out with the dog. Being outside, when I looked at the window, it was still there as before, only now there were blinds behind it. When I went back upstairs to the bedroom, there was no one at the window again. I began to feel crazy and started sleeping downstairs. The second thing I tried worked just as well as the first. I put chairs and heavy boxes full of stacks of papers in front of the window to see if anything would change. When I looked at the window from the street, creature was there, in spite of the fully boxed window. As a last-ditch effort, I asked my sister to check my room after I left. She was still sitting on the couch when I walked through the front door, unwilling to put off sitting for even a few minutes. She reported that my room was empty and asked if I was okay. Feeling the concerned and frightened looks from family members, I was scared for myself. Within weeks, I managed to come to terms with the existence of the gray silhouette. I looked at him less and less often, and his presence became less and less important to me. I had almost completely forgotten about him when tragedy struck. It was Saturday, a day I usually spend with friends. In the evening, I was relieving stress by driving around the suburb where I live. I left around 4 in the afternoon, and it wasn't until 4:26 that I received a creepy text from my mom urging me to come home. Upon returning, I looked up to the window. I froze when I saw its strange gray mouth curved in a horrible smile. I burst through the front door. My mom was hiding behind the couch in the living room with the phone in her hand after calling the police. Moments later, I was already kneeling beside her, comforting her and asking her where my sister was. My mom made only incoherent noises, no information I could get from her. I left her downstairs and ran upstairs to find out the reason for her condition. I really regretted deciding to go into my room. The whole room was scarlet in color, as if a huge can of paint had exploded and splattered all over the place. Parts of my sister were scattered on my bed and table, most of her torso lying motionless in the center of my carpet. Her face was nailed to the wall with a pencil, her eyes were missing and nowhere to be found. The eye holes were creepy, elongated. I threw up on the red floor, making the stench in the room even more nauseating. Stumbling, I made my way down the stairs to my crying mother and collapsed just as she did. I wasn't crying, however. I was only thinking, and that's when it all became clear to me. This creature was too dangerous to continue to ignore. Ever since the police came for the body and failed to find the perpetrator of the crime, I've spent most of my time in the county's public libraries or on so-called magical websites, trying to find a way to cleanse my home of the spirit. I ordered holy water, supposedly bottled from the Jordan River, sprinkled it over the still red room. After that, I went outside and saw the same gray monster staring at me from inside. No charms, amulets, or spells could drive the gray creature away. I cast defense spells, waving my arms and chanting like a manic cultist. In a daze of frustration, I tried to plead with the spirit, to make a pact with it, to leave offerings for it as if it were some god to be honored. Nothing worked to remove it from my room, and this brought me to my present state of mind. I have exhausted every possible remedy except burning the house down. I would do this if I could convince my mother of the monster's existence, but she always claims she can't see it when I try to point it out. I'm starting to realize that nothing can rid me of this creepy creature. That's why I decided to write this, to explain my next steps. I'm going to climb onto the roof and climb through the window. I want everyone to understand why I did this and to make sure it doesn't happen again. It's worth believing a person if they tell you they are afraid, and believe in what causes their fear, no matter how absurd it may be. I've tried everything I can think of. I'm done. This diary was found in Drake Weinman's possession on February 17th among other personal items including a watch battery, a wallet with an ID and several bills. The date and time of Drake's passing was 8:34 p.m. on February 17th. The cause is still unknown, although it is officially stated that he did it with his own hands. No signs of struggle or chemicals were found. Drake was lying face down on the floor of his room, where his sister was previously found. It is worth noting that on the last page of the quoted diary there was a hard-to-read message. A little later, specialists were able to translate it. It read, "God, why am I so gray?